In the smartphone ecosystem, the people are represented by two separate, yet equally important groups: the conglomerates who claim to provide innovative new products, and the Verge Mobile Show hosts who call them out on their shenanigans. These are their stories.
Hi, I'm Dieter Bohn.
I'm Vlad Savo.
I'm Chris Sigler.
And this is the Verge Mobile Show. This is a Verge and Mobile, Law and Verge, episode number 12, the week of August 13th. Thank you very much to the inestimable Sean Hollister for our introduction this week. I thought that was pretty special.
He's the man with the voice of gold. And by the way, Dieter, I think I speak for Vlad when I say that I very much missed you last week. Not to say Ross wasn't an amazing guest host, but I personally missed you.
I missed you guys as well. It was a sad time. Instead of you guys, I had Dan Hesse, who is very cool and very tall, but not as fun. Also, we are
not to drop
all
names
beard
or anything.
Yeah, we're an all beard podcast today.
We are. Actually, I haven't seen. This is a little embarrassing, but I haven't actually looked at the live feed yet, so I have no idea what Vlad looks like. Is his beard lush? Is it glorious?
It's glorious. I don't know if I'd call it lush though.
No, it's in the process of growing. It's in the process. It's getting there.
By the way, Vlad,
I'm not looking at the live stream either.
Vlad, I don't think that I mentioned this to you before, but when you, I think you tweeted a picture of yourself with like a handlebar thing going on, and it was, I mean, it looked absolutely amazing, and I have no idea why you didn't keep that.
I don't know. I kind of ended up feeling wrong. Like,
this wasn't your style.
It's just the wrong appearance. Having a mustache. I mean, I grew that out especially for you, Chris, as you know.
I appreciate that.
You
told
Vlad
me
having a mustache is wrong. I don't want anybody to be right. Just saying.
I know. I feel the same way. I feel exactly the same way.
Actually, since we're going down that topic, I came across this website. I think it's askmen.com, which, okay, the website isn't that random or weird, but the article was, it was like the top 10 top 10 countries with the most mustaches in them. And Bulgaria actually ranked in the top 10 in terms of prevalence of mustaches. Yeah. I think it probably isn't like absolute numbers. It's mustaches relative to men or relative to males. But that's still impressive and surprising.
And would you say that they're like they're really nice looking mustaches? Are they like Ron Swanson caliber mustaches, or are they kind of thin? Could they use some work?
I mean, I think most of them are pretty strong, fine mustaches. It's that Mediterranean stock. We're never short of facial hair or any other sort of hair. But anyway, mobile devices.
I've got it. We are broadcasting on the internet, showing you our facial hair live. For many of you using Flash, and Flash is going away on Android.
It is.
How do you like that? So basically, they're gonna stop providing it in Google Play, nay Android market, tomorrow as we record this. And I want to say I'm not sad to see it go, but I'm a tiny wee bit sad that it is going before we have like good, reliable, consistent mobile experiences on Android for video. I just wanted to watch this morning, actually, a Vimeo video. Didn't work on the Nexus 7, and it's like, oh, well, that sucks. Then I tried it on the iPad, no problem. So I am sad that I'm not sad to see Flash go on Android because it was never any good at all, ever. But I am sad that it does mean that like that last fallback solution for watching certain content is just not going to be there.
Well, I think it's an important thing though, because it really puts the pressure on the entire industry to step up and replace it, right? You know, as long as Flash is around, and available on all these new devices, that kind of lessens the impetus to make things work correctly. And I think that if you'd asked me in 2008, I would have told you, or even 2010, I probably would have told you that I deeply despised Apple for steadfastly refusing to support Flash on mobile. But in retrospect, I think it was the right move, and it helped move the industry along. And now this is going to be the next step to push it to the next level where we are completely, non-reliant on Flash. I agree, we're not there yet, but hopefully this will take us there.
Wait, Chris, did you not like it when Apple didn't want to support Flash? Because I then can lay claim to being right at the time, whereas you were so terribly wrong. Because I was in support of Apple's decision. As Dieter just said, Flash on Android or any sort of mobile device has never really worked properly. And where it's worked, it's consumed power, both in terms of processing power and battery life, in ways that just don't fit mobile devices at all. So it hasn't really been a useful or functional addition at all. So Apple's decision not to support it, not to get into that entire mess, was absolutely the right one. But I also felt that was the case at the time. When Steve Jobs was writing his thoughts on Flash, and he had what was it, like 6 reasons why it was a nightmare. It was Flash that he wrote that about, wasn't
it? 6 reasons Flash is a nightmare. I don't remember.
Yeah. He wrote his open letter about Flash.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I think there was 6 reasons.
Were there 6 reasons? Oh yes, it's not open in the full time. Web, reliability, battery life, touch, and growing dependent on third-party tools. Those were his 6 reasons.
So I don't necessarily agree with every single point on his list, but at the time, a lot of people derided that as just a bit of arrogance or whatever on Apple's part, and just trying to be different from everybody else. And it is absolutely true that if Flash could be made to work on mobile devices, it was the ideal standard because it was just so ubiquitous on a desktop. Every video hosting service, every video sharing service we've had has been Flash-based from the start. People are doing HTML5 video streaming as an add-on, as a secondary option. And again, as Dieter said, is still in the experimental stage. Not everybody has, or I don't know if anybody has, a really good player like that for HTML5. So it would have been great if it worked, but it never did. So why should we be sad?
It never worked on mobile. It worked fine on the desktop, with the exception of the horrendous, processor and battery life. There's a whole lot of reasons it didn't work, in the past few years. But initially, it was great. My problem is that HTML5 just isn't there. I mean, there was the experience I have every day trying to watch video on Android devices that don't support HTML5, or rather, the way that the app developer or the website developer coded their HTML5 version of the video, it doesn't appear on Android. And that's really the issue. Is I feel like there's not a de facto, this is how everybody should embed video now solution on HTML5. I know that there's this fight with Google, then Mozilla was in it, and Apple was in the debate about what exactly the HTML5 video standard should be in terms of encoding the video and serving it. The way that you embed it in a page is relatively simple. And I don't know exactly what the status is on that battle, but I do know that when I'm on a mobile device and there's video that I want to watch from Comedy Central or Vimeo or whomever, that I just cannot assume that it's going to work. It works on usually iOS because it's so ubiquitous and everybody knows how to code for it. But on Android and other platforms, it's just, I can never really know. And I find myself saving stuff to Pocket and then going back on my desktop later so I can watch it. And that's annoying.
I also think that the HTML5 experience, not just with video, but in general, there are some things where you have like an HTML5 experience and a Flash experience, and the Flash experience is still a little bit better or richer. And we need to get to the point where we can completely supplant Flash, and we're not there yet. A good example is Lytro, which I have right here in my hands. You guys probably aren't seeing it, but the Lytro embed to do the interactive depth of field for the just the web-based version is not nearly as good as the Flash embed. And so, that's one of many examples where we need to improve that.
Well, okay, that's fair enough. But seriously, the point about Flash, and Dieter said it works fine on the desktop. It doesn't work fine on the desktop. Just today, I published this article/editorial where I embedded a number of Flash videos, and I can tell you that while I was composing it and looking at it in our layout editor, the number of times that the Flash video just completely blanked out and I was seeing a white space on the page. And then sometimes it would come back. Sometimes I would hover over the white space and the video would pop up. And sometimes I would need to refresh entirely in order to see the video again. So that's one thing. This was happening with me on Chrome. But you can see those issues in every browser. And all of us have had this issue of having a Flash video playing somewhere in a tab, somewhere in your browser, and then your mouse pointer just disappears. Right? Maybe this is, again, Chrome specific. But we've all had this issue. We've all cried and moaned about this issue. Adobe's never fixed it. And I mean, we already know that Adobe has, abandoning Flash everywhere, which, again, to me is good riddance. But I don't want us to speak of Flash in overly positive terms just because it's dying and that's our habit. Not to speak badly of the dead, right? To try and be nice. I just don't want us to sugarcoat it. Flash has sucked for such a long time. And it's really time for us to just accept that we've got the internet, we've got things like video that we want to stream, and it's up to people, coders, to figure out how to do that in the best way. Flash wasn't it, so we move on.
But I have no problem speaking terribly of Symbian. I don't know what you're talking about.
Chris's email address is chris@theverge.com if you want to talk to him about your thoughts on Symbian.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we will see. If it would be nice if there were a clear open standard to replace Flash with HTML5 video that everybody sort of knew, but or knows. I feel like it's just going to be a mess for a while, and that's fine. It's better to have that, I guess, than Flash. But I mean, Adobe should be that company. They said they were going to be. They made comments like they were going to help solve this problem. But who knows if they're actually going to be able to pull it off, because Adobe hasn't. They're not exactly firing on all cylinders right now, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. And yes,
yeah. Well, should we talk about, so Motorola, Google's going to lay off 20% of Motorola's workforce, which is a bummer.
Google has decided that it doesn't want all of Motorola's cylinders. It's like, what, 50 of you guys could just go. We don't need you.
Yeah.
And they're gonna kick out fewer phones too, right?
Right. So these are, I was trying to figure this out earlier in the week. Are these Google's first publicly announced layoffs in the company's history?
Ooh.
If they aren't, then it's one of the very few. I know that they've quietly pushed some people out of the door in the past, but I don't know if this has ever really happened on this scale before. It's
on this scale, definitely not. I mean, this is some 4,000 employees that are being fired.
Right. Yeah, it's a big deal for these guys, and I think, I have mixed feelings about it. I think we all have mixed feelings about Motorola. I don't think that if Motorola had stayed an independent company, they would have gone this route as drastically and as quickly as they have. And I think that Google is really anxious to push the non-Android hardware out of its portfolio. Really, that's what it's all about, right? Motorola has a lot of low-end devices still that it sells in emerging markets, Brazil and China and India, where they aren't Android-based, and that doesn't play into Google's business model for Motorola at all. So it's getting rid of those right off the top. One thing that I heard yesterday that's kind of interesting, at least to the local economy, since I'm Chicago-based here, is that they had specific incentives to move their headquarters to downtown Chicago, because right now they're actually based way out in a suburb. But in order to qualify for those incentives, they had to maintain local employment of at least 2,500. This round of layoffs pushes them below 2,500. So they actually are now disqualified for incentives that they had before. So I don't know what that means in terms of, where their headquarters is going to ultimately be. I think they're still moving downtown here, but I've said for many months now, and I still think this is true, that in the long term, it makes a ton of sense for them to be either co-located with Google or at least in the same neighborhood. And they do have an office on the West Coast, but they've got what I heard is that most of their local employees in Chicago are engineers. Those are the kinds of people that you want on the West Coast. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them move out west sooner or later.
I would guess it would take a while before they move out west. I think that at some point, Illinois or even Chicago would be like, well, we really do want you to stay. Let's see if we can change our tone on those incentives. I don't know. I mean, I personally like the idea of there being innovative, technology company not located in California. I think that's, that's good for the diversity of thought and what goes into smartphones. And I'm now giving Motorola praise for its diversity of thought, which is a weird thing. But nevertheless, I'm doing it. I don't know. I mean, I look at the Photon Q and I wonder just what's going on over there. But
I agree with Dieter. There's absolutely a need to diversify the sources for our designs and our ideas for phones. Whether it be, outside of the West Coast of the United States or entirely outside of the United States, it is good to have fresh ideas. I mean, one of the most innovative phones, which never actually materialized, if you guys remember, it was the first EOS, and that was thought up over in Israel. And the innovation with it was that the whole UI was supposed to be thumb-based. So you only use one hand, one thumb, and it'll kind of... like the UI grows around your fingers and your interaction with it, which probably was like too ambitious a project, and that's why it never materialized. But it didn't come from the San Francisco area; it didn't come from the Bay Area. So I agree. Also, on the topic of Motorola, I need to mention this. I got a Droid Razr Max here because I wanted to see it. I got it from Motorola. I wanted to see it for the first time. And the first thing is, this thing has a massive battery inside it, but I can't tell that. It doesn't feel fat. Like, I expected it to be much thicker than it actually is. And I just unplugged it from the charger the moment we started the show. So I'll update you guys somewhere, somehow.
The battery is not going to decrease during the course of, if you actually see the battery go down while we're podcasting, that means we've been podcasting way too long.
No. I'm not talking about the podcast or the show. I'm talking in general, like during the week, because I've also given myself a tweet embargo for a week, so I'm not tweeting for a week just to see that I can do it. So I can't tweet when the battery runs out, but maybe I can. Yeah,
but you're on Google Plus, so I mean, really.
I don't mean any disrespect, Vlad, but that really isn't as ambitious of a project as Paul is undertaking.
Well, what is, Chris? I could going off some mini pyramids, and it'd be less ambitious than Paul.
This is true. Yeah, the Droid. My concern with the Droid Razr Max, I just tweeted this yesterday, is that I don't know if they can repeat the feat of that device with a better display, right? Because the reason they were able to do that is because they took the Razr chassis, which is only 7.1 millimeters, and the way they got down to 7.1 millimeters is by using a really crappy self-illuminating display, an AMOLED, and just bumping it back up to the regular thickness of a regular, like, modern smartphone, and then using all that remaining capacity for battery. I think it's 3,000 milliamp hours or something. So the question is, can they? So the question is, can they take that concept and put in a display that doesn't suck? I don't know.
I mean, that thing is going to last a month. I mean, the Razr Max has got incredibly good battery life with LTE. I mean, if you're just running this thing just straight HSPA, I mean, I can't imagine what you could do to it to kill the battery. You'd literally have to, like, put it in an oven and run flash video before it goes away tomorrow constantly, and maybe you could drain the battery.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out. But I mean, look, what I'm saying is, it's such a fat battery that you could easily have a fat phone and feel justified in the phone being chunky. Like, perfect example is the PureView 808, which I've had plenty of recent experience with. It feels about, twice the size of this. Like, the Razer Max just kind of feels, it just feels like a regular size phone. It isn't extra super slim and skinny like the original Razer or, the new HTC and Samsung phones, but I actually don't need it to be. Like, it feels like it's a great size and there's no compromise. But as Chris says, the no compromise in terms of size is down to the AMOLED display.
Yeah.
Which is not case, just, it's not.
Let's actually bring it back to Motorola itself, because this is interesting to me. I mean, just looking at this particular phone, which I don't know why I'm carrying on about it so much, like nobody else has really tried to match that. We'll just go crazy with the battery thing. Samsung has done stuck a really big battery inside the Galaxy S3, but that's just part of the whole package. And Samsung and HTC, like I've been complaining for a long time, keep going for bigger and bigger displays and trying to crank out specs. Motorola is doing something different. So if the company is now going to focus on a few good phones, maybe, hopefully, that diversity that Dieter and I spoke about will help, and then we'll see some few good phones that are actually different from the good phones that everybody else is trying to build. What do you guys think?
Right.
Yeah, I would like to see something, inspiring. I mean, the Razer, it's a cool design, and I like the aesthetic of the hardware. Of course, the software, I don't know, whatever. But I mean, it didn't catch my attention because I was more focused on the Galaxy Nexus and the innovation that was happening there. And it took them forever to get Ice Cream Sandwich on the Razer. And we've obviously seen Samsung just dominate, and we've seen HTC at least try to sort of reinvent itself. But I'm interested to see if Motorola can, elucidate a similar vision for fewer phones, and this is what Motorola is. This is what it means to buy a Motorola phone now. Because right now, if you ask somebody what does it mean to buy a Motorola phone, they'll tell you, what do they tell you? They'll tell you it's a StarTAC or Razer, the original Razer, or they'll tell you that, oh yeah, that Razer Max has got ridiculously long battery life. And those are cool, features, and that's, there's people still know Motorola, but nobody thinks about Motorola as like having a corporate identity as an Android manufacturer. And it'll be interesting to see if they can actually pull that off.
I want a Pebble 2. That's all I want. Pebble 2, the original Pebble was an amazing device. The spring-loaded hinge, the way that you opened it by like sliding it off the magnet. I think I've waxed poetic about this phone 3 or 4 times in the past, but it's worth doing again since we're talking about Motorola. My question is, we've heard Google say on many occasions that they're going to run Motorola at an arm's length, which I think is good for many reasons. One is that there's less of an appearance of favoritism among other Android OEMs, but then also it makes it easier for Google to offload Motorola in the future if they want to, which I wouldn't be surprised if a year or 2 or 3 down the road that happened. But by the same token, you can kind of tell, you definitely get the impression that Google is not a fan of OEM skins. And they are probably not a fan of the fact that there really isn't anyone other than Google doing anything with the stock Android experience with the Nexus series. And we've heard these rumors about the Wall Street Journal rumor about a series of Nexus devices coming out later this year, Nexus phones specifically. So I'm wondering whether Motorola is going to continue to develop Blur, whatever it is that they're calling it these days, or if they are, is that going to rub Google the wrong way enough that they kind of steer Motorola in the direction of going stock?
The Razer Nexus. I'm just thinking of the name.
Yeah,
it sounds appealing. It sounds good.
I'm on record as what did I commit to? Buying 100 Razers if they ship it with a stock Android. Is that what I said? This is like from 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I hope it happens. But then I guess Motorola becomes the company that ships stock Android. That could be cool. I could get on board with that, actually, instead of just waiting for the next Nexus device. I am sickened to death about not having a stock Android LTE device on AT&T. I'm running Cyanogen Mod 9 on HTC One X, developed by a guy over at XDA, and it's running pretty well, but it's still not quite, fully stable. So I'm going to be switching back to the Galaxy Nexus, and
you switching back to the Galaxy Nexus? I'm going to get back to that, but let me just say that quote from you was just the perfect distillation of a first world problem. I'm sick to death of not having an AT&T LTE phone with such and such specs and such capabilities and stock Android. Not having that is literally making me sick. I am getting closer to death because this thing is not in my life right now.
Look, okay. Europe and Asia led the entire wireless industry for a solid 20 or even 30 years. And now it's America's turn. Freedom prevails. Bald eagles flying over. In fact, Creighton and Brendan, if you guys can add some bald eagles behind me right now, I'd appreciate that. It's sort of a CGI thing. Maybe a flag, maybe some fireworks. It is our turn to lead the world with LTE, and I am reveling in it, and I know Dieter is as well. And you're just
I'm just gonna go out and buy a PS Vita on behalf of the Euro-Japanese team.
I really wish I had my sunglasses sitting here because I really want to deal with it, but I don't have my sunglasses nearby. So,
but seriously, to make the point though, Dieter is switching back to the Galaxy Nexus. Chris admitted over the weekend he's switching back to the Galaxy Nexus.
I'm switching back to the Galaxy Nexus temporarily until I actually.
It's temporary with both of you. I know it's temporary until the next Nexus. Fine, okay. But seriously, I'm the guy who wrote the piece against Chris's piece saying the Galaxy Nexus isn't the best Android phone. And then you guys are using the Galaxy Nexus again. The facts kind of speak for themselves.
No, listen, Vlad, I'm just going to put an end to this rampant and baseless speculation right now. Okay. Yes, my SIM is in a Galaxy Nexus as we speak. Yes. But the only reason I did it is because there is no good reason. I was just like, I'll switch phones for because I to be very honest, I haven't played with 4.1 that much on the phone side. I played with the Nexus 7 a lot, but not 4.1 on a phone. I only used it on the Galaxy Nexus for 15 minutes before I put it back in the GS3 before. So I wanted to give it an honest and fair shake. Although AT&T HSPA in Chicago is just as bad as ever. It's completely non-functional during weekdays. So this isn't going to stand for very long. I'm sure that by the end of this week, I will be back into another device.
So the fact that we started a conversation about Motorola and ended talking about the Galaxy Nexus is a perfect example of where the company is right now. We got to move on. I want to talk about this new mobile payments committee, which I want to say sounds really ominous, but maybe it's not. So I've been complaining at length about the fact that mobile payments is fragmented and there's no unified ecosystem and you never know if you're going to be able to use it. And apparently all the big players listened to me specifically, and in reaction to my specific complaints, because I'm so influential and powerful in the industry, they have formed the Mobile Payments Committee, which consists of Google, ISIS, PayPal, Verifone, Intuit, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon. Basically,
can I just drop a quote in here, just very briefly? Can. I believe I'm quoting correctly from Civilization here, and the quote is, "The bureaucracy is expanding to meet the growing needs of the bureaucracy." That's how this feels to me. Let's have a committee to organize the organizational bodies.
But it is, you laugh about it all you want, but it is a very important step. It is a step that was needed because it was starting to look like, this was just going to devolve into a really consumer hostile fiefdom that served nobody's benefits, or best interest, excuse me. And I have to say, after using Google, the latest version of Google Wallet, on the Galaxy Nexus the past couple days, it's starting to congeal. It's starting to really come together, and I want to see all of these carriers and Google and Apple. I want to see all these guys get on the same page because this is something that has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, what was the takeaway at CTA? I forget what that big article about fragmentation, what we called it. One of the original headlines was mobile payments nobody's winning, but we're all losing. And it's all, everybody was trying to win. And that just meant that you had no way of knowing if, your particular wallet would work. And in theory, anyway, all these guys being on a committee together, sure, it's more bureaucracy and it's all star chamber and there's going to be backroom deals and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? If the thing that gets kicked out of this is here's the standard, you can have all these fragmented solutions, but here's a baseline standard that they're all going to use so that you can trust that your wallet will work when you go to CVS or 7-Eleven or Tiffany's or I don't know, where people shop. That's good. And I hope that actually happens. Now, the interesting thing about this crazy committee is that there's one company that's not on it that you would expect to be on it, and that's Square, AKA the company that's actually doing the best job at mobile payments right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually expect Square to be on that committee. And just very briefly to come back to them, the reason I was flippant with the point about bureaucracy was that, yes, it's a beautiful dream that they will organize themselves and have a cogent plan that applies to everybody. But I kind of feel like we've seen this with a whole bunch of such loose voluntary organizations, things like the Open Handset Alliance. I mean, what does that stand for with Android? Like, who does what there? How does that contribute to the overall landscape? I don't think it does anything. And I kind of feel like this is going to go the same way. But also, this committee that is now being gathered seems to be exclusively focused on enabling mobile payments via the mobile phone itself, whereas Square is focused on its own service and also on its own appendage for a phone. Right, so you need the Square card reader in order to have your cards read. I don't think Square has a.
No, that's not true at all. Square has geofencing where you walk in and the cashier's got an iPad and they're like, oh, Vlad just walked in, and you're like, hey, I'm Vlad. And like, hey, Vlad, I would like this coffee, and they're like, here's your coffee, and then you say thanks and you walk away, and that's the whole transaction. Like, you don't pull out your phone, you don't swipe a card, you don't tap an NFC thing. They know who you are. They have your picture pops up, and because you walked into their geofence, and then you ask for what you want to buy, and they sell it to you, and you're done.
Okay,
right?
So I have completely missed this business model pivot from Square. I still remember the Square card reader.
Oh no, they still have it.
Well, it still exists.
And it's still their most popular option. And in fact, they recently, I want to say 6 months ago, they finally switched it to being encrypted. It used to be that it would just send the credit card data unencrypted, but now it's encrypted, so it'll only work with Square's app, which was the thing that PayPal and Intuit were yelling at them about or saying they were better at. Anyway. But the thing about Square is you want to root for them. Jack Dorsey, is that his name? And little startup, and isn't it an exciting story? And that's great, but that's not what gets you at the checkout register at Macy's. But then again, it got him in the checkout register at Starbucks. So maybe I'm wrong.
Which is a big deal. Which is a really big deal.
Yeah.
What's a little surprising?
My perception of Square from the very beginning was if you looked at their business model, number one on the list of goals was Starbucks. It was just right. Obviously, I think even the initial pitch was here's how you pay for a cup of coffee. It's where do you go to bring that sort of functionality other than Starbucks, which has outlets so far and wide and so many of them. It's a huge coup for them. But just to salvage quickly my initial point about not expecting Square to be part of this committee communion organization, again, even with geofencing, their business model is different. They're not trying to do mobile apps for phones in the same way that everybody else is kind of trying to do, like Google Wallet.
Well, yeah, but do they need to? I mean,
no, they don't.
The argument that we've been making is that mobile payments, in order to not suck, need to be ubiquitous. And is Square on a path to being ubiquitous? In order to play that ubiquitous game, you've got to get in the dirty mess of talking to these gigantic players. They control the market, Visa and MasterCard, and NEC and whoever else makes the checkout registers, that whole thing. Square could disrupt it, and they've done it a little bit with their little dongle and direct payments on devices and yada yada yada. But these other companies aren't going to just go away, and they're going to fight back. And so I would like to see Square go ahead and get its hands dirty and corrupt its ideals just a little bit to get us all on the path to, a single ubiquitous solution. That's, maybe it's a meta solution, but it's at least something that, we know will work. And like, that's been my thing for, since I started talking about mobile payments.
What's a little surprising to me is that Starbucks, I feel like Starbucks is in the process of seeding its own very advanced mobile payment system. I mean, they have one of the most successful mobile payment systems in the world already, right? I think there was some stat that came out earlier this week or last week that 40 or 50 or 60, some ridiculous percentage of all transactions at Starbucks currently in the United States are mobile based, which is insane. And I don't think there's any other major retailer that can claim that. Because they have their Starbucks app that is on iOS and Android.
Right.
And you just, you link up whatever card to it and it displays that 2D barcode. And then they have those 2D scanners in every Starbucks already. So, I mean, it's really cool that Starbucks is being so proactive about this and advancing the cause. But at the same time, they were already there. So I don't quite understand why they were the ones to step forward and support this on a really broad scale when they already had that capability, and they've been pushing that capability for years.
That's a really good point, and I can't even come up with a good answer in that situation. I'm as surprised as Dieter. That's a high number. But then we also have to consider that, Starbucks outlets aren't going to be, parked next to a motel on the highway in Montana or someplace like that. Most Starbucks are, in really urbanized central city areas where people already have smartphones and techies tend to hang out.
Oh, there's Starbucks in Montana. You'd be surprised.
Starbucks
okay,
everywhere.
Yeah, probably, actually.
All right, what's next? So iMore has got a rumor that Apple's going to take pre-orders for the new iPhone right away on the 12th, and that they'll start internationally on October 5th, and they should be shipping, I think, relatively quickly, pretty much right away. September 21st is when people will be able to start buying the device. I mean, if we buy that, they're going to be announcing the product on the 12th, then Apple has always had pre-orders right away and shipped right away right after. So it's pretty much par for the course. So I don't really have any reason to doubt this. I'm excited for an LTE iPhone, which is weird for me to say because I'm totally not inspired by iOS 6. But I'm excited to see what an iPhone feels like with crazy fast LTE data. And
I've got bad news for you, Dieter. Your LTE is not going to be crazy fast because you and somewhere between 10 and 50 million other Americans are all going to be experiencing LTE on iOS for the first time, or on an iPhone for the first time, I should say. And these networks are going to slow to a crawl. I think that I talked about this a week or two ago. Maybe I didn't, but I think I did. That LTE in AT&T LTE in Chicago has already noticeably started to slow down, and I think that's the GS3 effect because I've seen GS3s everywhere since they launched, and I think that's really started to have a negative pressure on LTE speeds. So if the GS3 is doing that, I can only imagine what the iPhone's going to do.
Is it time for me to give up an AT&T? Is that it? Is that like
it's time for you? It's time for you to give up on wireless. Everybody is moving back to corded phones, and just stay on your cable modem. Don't leave your house. That's all I can recommend.
I mean, if I was in your shoes, Dieter, I would just switch to T-Mobile. Just curse everybody else off, switch to T-Mobile, and support the little guy because that company is struggling. And yes, I am in the process of doing a really kick-ass segue right now, because T-Mobile reported its quarterly results, yada yada yada. And they tried to patch over things, but they've lost 500,000 of their contract subscribers in the last quarter, or relative to the previous year, I think, which is, a hugely worrying number. Like everybody else, Sprint was kind of able to hold on to its subscribers. AT&T and Verizon keep growing subscribers, but the guys who are losing subscribers are T-Mobile, and they're losing heavily.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that, I mean, I'm not too surprised to see them lose postpaid subscribers, but Both T-Mobile and Sprint are seeing huge growth in prepaid subscribers, and this has sort of been floating around on the internet. This idea that why are we all on these super expensive postpaid plans when prepaid plans are so much cheaper month to month for basically the exact same service? And I'm getting to the point where I don't have a good answer for that at all. I buy phones so often that the subsidies don't matter to me. I'm basically subsidizing nothing except for AT&T's profit margin at this point. The only reason for me to not move to a prepaid model is basically phone choice and phone selection. And that's it.
But prepaid, with prepaid, you just get at least on T-Mobile, you just get a SIM anyway, or you can just get a SIM if you want, and then you do whatever you want with it.
Well, what I want is for there to be an LTE option.
Yeah. Which, by the way, this isn't on the topic list, but we should briefly mention it. We are hearing rumors. This actually came in through T-Mo News, but we've kind of been able to semi-corroborate it. There's discussion of a Samsung SGHT 899 for T-Mobile that appears to be a Windows Phone 8 device with a 720p display and LTE.
This is the Odyssey, right?
Yes, this is the phone that we rumored as the Odyssey. Well, not rumored. It was in Samsung's court documents from the Apple court case last month, which appears to be basically a GS3 chassis for Apollo, which when you think about it is exactly what Apollo needs. And so if T-Mobile gets this device and it's one of their launch LTE devices, that'll be a pretty compelling Windows Phone 8 argument. But my guess, since T-Mobile's previously said that they won't have commercial LTE until 2013, my guess is that they'll launch it with the LTE dormant. And if it launches in 2012 at all, we don't even know that much. But if it launches this year, you probably won't realistically be able to get any real LTE service until next year.
That's too long to wait, man. I can't handle it.
I know. I hear you.
No, but both. I had this article about Sprint trying to be like the nice guy, but what's interesting with both of these guys is they're struggling, but they are managing to pick up some customers in the prepaid market, but the prepaid market just isn't as profitable as a postpaid market, and so I would be really interested to know if you go into the boardroom of T-Mobile and Sprint, how they really feel about all these customers on these other plans that are cheaper for the customer, but not making them as much money. They're at least offsetting their losses in postpaid customers, but they're doing it with people that bring in less ARPU. We all know that
T-Mobile
ARPU rules all.
I don't know about Sprint, but T-Mobile has actively been trying to reduce subsidies for a long time. I think that there's a perception at T-Mobile that really weighs on their bottom line, having to really heavily subsidize hardware. So I can think of several examples of hardware that they've launched in the past couple of years that they've launched at a higher price point, even on postpaid, than AT&T and Verizon have. And that's because they're not as willing to put these giant subsidies on those devices. So from that perspective, you would think that moving to this subsidy-free model, even at the cost of monthly ARPU, would be exactly what they've been trying to do on some level. At least if you're trying to be
T-Mobile, we end up in this. They're doing this equipment installment plan, which, again, in principle, I think it's a good idea. Where you still get a subsidy, you still sign a contract, but once you're done paying off the subsidy, the $20 a month extra, then you just go back down to your regular cheaper plan. It's a great idea in principle, but in practice, it just sort of is another confusing mess. I just wish that somebody, Verizon, would start listing the full unsubsidized price of phones. Even if you're paying the subsidized price, they should list next to every phone, this is the full unsubsidized price first, and then this is the subsidized price if you're willing to sign it to your contract. That should be how
they do sometimes. They do, and the thing is, when they do that, I'm not even convinced that that's legitimate, because they list things like 6599 spot 99. What am I? Okay, 659.99. And they kind of seem like inflated prices. And they seem like way too perfect prices when you consider that they're buying those phones in box from phone makers. So I never really trust those prices when they say this is how much it used to be and this is how much it could be otherwise, etc. Like that doesn't feel like the right price.
Well, they're not selling the phone at cost, right? They're even when they're selling it off contract, they're selling it with a profit margin.
Yeah,
I mean that's
right.
That's their right as a retailer. But I think what Dieter is suggesting is that it would be nice to see the American carriers, and we've said this countless times, but it would be nice to see the American carriers move to a slightly more European model where it really is about the cost of the phone, and then if you want a tariff that knocks some of that, that reduces the sting of that hardware cost, then go ahead and sign up for it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, to me, this preceding conversation is kind of absurd because I see exactly what you're talking about, the European model, Chris, where in the UK, you have Amazon, you have a bunch of importers, guys like Expenses, Handtech, Clove, etc., etc. Like, there's actually a really well-developed mini industry of people importing, bringing in phones, and then competing on price, which I know is kind of absurd to the US phone market, but they do compete on price, just on the phone itself. And Amazon, because it doesn't pay any tax in the UK, because of tax dodging such and such, can really go some stupendously low prices, and that creates great competition. And then, I mean, then you have a choice. Then you could go prepaid. You could have a contract, but just get the SIM card as opposed to buying the phone, doing the whole subsidy dance. Which, as Dieter says, it gives people better ARPU because the subsidy automatically includes some extra cash for them. Like, however much you subsidize the cost of the phone, it's not perfect. They always, tack on a couple of extra dollars, and that's how you increase the output. So, I mean, my advice to anybody is always buy the phone by itself, buy the data and the contract by itself. They're perfectly separable things. They don't need to go together.
No, but see, that's a lie, because you cannot go into AT&T or Verizon today on a postpaid plan and say, give me the data and don't charge the extra that you would have charged me if I had bought a phone with a subsidy. You can do that on T-Mobile, and you can do it on some of the prepaid stuff that are both MVNOs on Sprint and blah, blah, blah. But if you go into AT&T and pay for an Android phone straight up, you still are paying the same amount per month that you would be paying if you had AT&T subsidizing the phone by $400 over the course of 2 years. So if you think you're going to be switching phones a lot, sure, don't pay the subsidy. But in the US on AT&T and Verizon, I think that you should go for the subsidy, even though you're stuck in a contract and it sucks and blah, blah, blah. At least you know that you're getting that $400 off the price of the phone, and that gets spread out over the cost of your 2-year contract. You're actually paying more by buying a phone straight out if you're not getting a discount on your data and voice on your contract.
By the way, Creighton just whispered into my ear. He said, "I know what ARPU is." But for the benefit of our
we've talked
listeners,
about ARPU every week.
I know. Well, and he knows what ARPU is. We all know what ARPU is, but we should say ARPU is average revenue per user, ARPU.
It's how much money the carriers squeeze out of you every month, and they all have basically. Verizon, I think, had record ARPU, the highest of any carrier. AT&T was very high. Sprint was very proud of theirs. Yeah. I don't know what T-Mobile's was. It probably wasn't great. But they're all making a ton of money. And I hate them. I hate everybody.
Well, actually, I mean, Sprint is losing a ton of money. It's losing billions, but that's because of, the financial engineering that goes on behind the scenes with all of these corporations and the complexity. In terms of, as you say, Dieter, just selling stuff to people, they're making way too much money.
I want to talk real quick about this federal report. They're going to maybe reassess, quote unquote, how cell phone radiation gets measured and approved in the U.S. for compliance with the FCC, and we've got this report from Adrian, describing how the process looks now. And that's fine, and we can have an argument that is completely uninformed about which study is more likely to be correct or not correct about whether or not it causes cancer. But what's crazy to me is these things are designed as though they assume you're carrying your phone in a holster. And I guess like it's not recommended that you carry your phone in a pocket. Like, so like the radiation stuff is set assuming the phone is on a holster on your belt, not in your pocket. And it seems like a really small difference in terms of its proximity to your body, but it's enough to make me go, I'm not going to start carrying my phone in my holster because that's crazy.
This is,
but
I mean, let's be real. This is only a problem if you have any desire to have children whatsoever, which, you know.
That's fair enough. Yeah, which I don't.
Right. I mean,
or maybe I do.
Who wants to reproduce?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen a normal human being put their phone in a holster in a very, very long time. I mean, there's Dwight on The Office. He uses a holster. But other than that, it's not really a common sight. It's more, I think it's more a common sight these days for someone who's using a BlackBerry or an iDen device. That's about
Actually, if you want to see a phone in a holster, go to a Microsoft store and you will see those Lumia 900s in like iPhone holsters, iPhone leather cases.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So what, the store employees
I've seen it, and I think
that?
Matthew Parizano on Twitter, he was tweeting about it the other day too. Like we both seen it.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to wait. I'm sorry, Vlad. I have to interrupt before I forget. There's a very important Tumblr that everyone should check out that I just found out about myself today, called CelebrityWindowsPhoneSightings.tumblr.com, where you will see some amazing pictures of real life celebrities.
Where
using
you see
Windows.
under construction, still awaiting building materials.
You didn't know about CelebrityWindowsPhoneSightings.tumblr.com?
No, I had no idea. But
you're featured on it.
I know. I had no idea. The most amazing thing to me about this site is that there are like tons of B and C and D listers and E listers like myself. And all of the B and C listers are using glossy white Nokia Lumia 900s, sometimes with the matching monster headphones. And my suspicion is that Nokia like blanketed the entire B and C list community with these devices at some point earlier this year. And then, you know, they all felt compelled to take Instagrams of themselves, you know, using these phones. It's great. It's really wonderful. I hope Nokia does it again for their Apollo launches.
Man, I don't know who photoshopped this cyan Lumia 900 in your hand there, Chris, but it's not a very good Photoshop.
It wasn't me. That's all I can tell you is that it definitely was not me.
Yeah,
I mean,
you've got
they
much
could
more
probably get a
Photoshop skills than
signed copy from Chris anyway. He's quite proud of his Windows Phone usage, so I don't think Chris wants to hide from that fact. But quick correction, there is absolutely never justification to say there's a really important Tumblr that everybody needs to know about. Like that sentence, you can just, you know, slide it away, file it away as not going to use that again. My only question was, do we think that there is somebody who used to work for HTC when they designed the Nexus 1 who has moved to the US government's testing facility? Because it's the same kind of thing. Remember when... Okay, wait. It's a dubious connection, but it's there. Sticking a phone in a holster, not putting it in your pocket. Remember when the Nexus 1 has some screen issues with people popping it in a pocket? And HTC's first reaction was tantamount, or was it Google's? I don't know. But the first reaction was tantamount to saying, well, you're not supposed to put the phone in your pocket. And then everyone was like, what?
I don't remember this at all.
Are you guys serious? The Nexus 1.
Like crazy?
It was within the past few years, people. Okay, well, the Nexus 1, it had some screen issues with scratching on the screen. And...
it was... okay.
That was... Okay. Well, I'm sure that some of our listeners / viewers will back me up on this.
Scratching. Okay, I do vaguely remember this, yes.
Yeah.
According to HTC's technical support, they don't go in pockets unless the screen gets cracked. I think they were referring to back pockets. Like, you're not supposed to sit on the damn things.
Right. Which
I don't think the scratches were happening from people sitting on them. Then you kind of get a shattering effect.
Well, so I think that there are a lot of people, there are probably a lot of people who just throw their phone in a pocket with like keys and coins and stuff, which, I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of material, space age materials the phone is made out of, you still shouldn't be doing that. So that's one conceivable explanation.
Speaking of phones and holsters, RIM says that it is totally ready to license BlackBerry 10.
So somebody should license it.
Yeah.
They have the A, now they need the B,
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. No, we won't. No, I mean, no, we don't need to go into RIM anymore. That's dead. I mean, we also had the rumor that like IBM was like poking around at their enterprise services unit and maybe wanted to buy it. Came out of Bloomberg. Like, my sense, and like it's been this from the beginning, since these rumors started, is like the board has like drank the Kool-Aid. They fully want to see what happens. They fully think that like they're going to launch BlackBerry 10 and then something's going to happen. I know, Chris, you don't think they're even going to get that far, but I think they're going to get that far, and it's going to be like it'll be out on the market for a month, and then the board will be like, yeah, it didn't work. Let's sell the company.
I think that you could very well be right. They could end up in a touchpad kind of situation where these phones hit the market for a very short period of time, and then there's a bait and switch kind of thing, and the company goes away, or they break it up and sell it piecemeal, or who knows. There are many different scenarios. None of them that I can see end well for RIM, and I'm not a professional analyst. And I don't have an MBA, and I don't have a PhD in economics, so I don't want to make any diehard predictions on what's going to happen with this company. But I just, you look at every possible scenario. I don't know how or where they can succeed, and I'm sure, to sort of back up this IBM thing that went around, I'm sure that there is a lot of value in what RIM has done and continues to do in that space. They have a lot of expertise in enterprise security and infrastructure, and they can tie into all these different services, and they're good supporting devices from an IT perspective. And that business undoubtedly has a lot of value. But as far as BlackBerry 10 specifically goes, they're starting from scratch. There's also the QNX business, which has a lot of value too. They're in a lot of cars. They're in a lot of other kinds of embedded systems. So there is value in the company that's waiting to be unlocked, but I don't see how, I think that the end game for RIM is probably going to be that they break up pieces of the company that are worth a lot of money and sell them off, and whatever's left just withers on the vine. That's dire, I know, but we've been through too much. The downfall of the Symbian Foundation broke my heart. I'll never be able to get over that. And since then, I've just been a jaded son of a gun. I don't know.
Well, BlackBerry 10, like the playbook, probably. Well, no, in fact, I'm sure it will. Will run Qt apps based on the Qt application framework, Qt, that Nokia has just sold off to, what is it, Digia? Digia? Must be Digia. And so, like, the core application, it's this framework that's actually was pretty good for cross-platform stuff, and I suppose it still is. It was for developing on Symbian and then on MeeGo. I know that Qt apps were running on WebOS. They've got it running on the playbook. So it seems like it's a relatively flexible application framework. But if they'll get it running for Android, iOS, Windows 8, they say. But I mean, I think it's like, I'm not a Qt fanboy because I don't know that much about it, but it's always been like an interesting thing. It's always seemed like it was the closest to actually being cross-platform app development before HTML5, and still probably better performance than some HTML5 stuff. And I'm a little bit sad to see Nokia drop it, but I'm not at all surprised.
But Nokia wasn't really going to do anything with it. It was
right.
Qt was part of its former strategy, the one that revolved around the various Symbian MeeGo combinations that Nokia was going to hopefully try and develop and create. So it makes sense to set it off. I mean, Nokia initially sold off, I believe, some licensing rights to Digia, which is another Finnish company. So at least Qt is sticking around in Finland, even if Nokia's manufacturing facilities aren't. Zing. And I mean, the other thing really to be said about this is that Digi is paying 4 million euros to complete this deal, which tells you everything you need to know. Nokia is cutting ties with his former strategy, former operations. I mean, Steven Elop has already cut quite a few jobs, so which presumably, touch on this Qt development team. So the price of 4 million euros in corporate terms, I mean, to you and I, it's a lot of money, but in corporate terms, it's like, well, here's a bit of loose change.
Right? It's like
here's a bit of loose change.
You may as well have just open sourced it and given it away. That at least would have gotten them, a little bit of goodwill. But I mean,
I think it's a little bit like. I think it's a little bit like Dig. I think that there's a lot more to the story than the $500,000 that was paid for Dig. I think there's more to the story than the 4 million euro that Digia paid for Qt. Because I mean, if nothing else, there's the ongoing expense of paying the engineers that are moving to Digia. I mean, there's a whole thing. It's not just the upfront 4 million euro.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, Nokia could be saving a lot of money in redundancy payments. If it decided, okay, we're open sourcing this, we're shutting down development, it might have had to pay off a whole bunch of these engineers, whereas Digia might be picking that up. A great example of a similar thing is over here in the UK with soccer clubs. A few of them have had debt problems, and a club will be taken over for the price of £1, like a single pound coin, but then the guy who takes over the club takes on the cost of like 100 million, 200 million pounds worth of debts. So Digia might well be taking on some of that extra toxic baggage on Nokia's behalf, and improving Nokia's bottom line at the end. Because seriously, this 4 million euros, if we're talking Apple profits, it's like a rounding error.
Yeah,
it's irrelevant.
Vlad, do you want to talk just really? I mean, it's not strictly like smartphone related, but this piece that you wrote about the Surface and how it sort of might affect Nokia. It was a really good piece, and I just wanted to at least tell people to go read it. But maybe you want to say something.
Well, yes, briefly, to try and get people not to chop my head off for it. Like, I'm not trying to attack anybody with this. It was more a rumination on the situation rather than anything else. And also, I readily admit that it's kind of late analysis to Microsoft Surface announcement. Like, Microsoft announced Surface back in June. I'm writing this this week, but it just kind of dawned on me. It was surprising, and part of the reason why I came back to Nokia is because somebody emailed me asking, "Do you have any news about Nokia tablet?" And then I was like, "Wait, hang on a second. We haven't heard anything about this." Yeah. And the thing for me with Surface is, first of all, Microsoft, in terms of publicity, it was a massive success. Just getting people hyped up, interested in the product, etc. It was a brilliant success. And now when you say Windows 8 and you say what is the characteristic device for this platform, it's Surface. And Microsoft is not shying away from that, because it recently held a party to celebrate Windows 8 going gold, being released to manufacturing. And at that party, it made a massive, massive cake, and it has Surface tablets with the keyboards attached at the top of the cake. I mean, actually, the table was a cake. Like, we had a pretty big discussion about this crazy Microsoft cake. The table was a cake, and then the Surface on top, there was like 3 or 4 parts, which were all cake. It's just madness. It's nuts.
It's a lot of cake, is what it is.
Right, but the thing is, how does that impact Nokia? And so, some of the comments on my piece were like, well, you're overrating the importance of this Nokia tablet to Nokia's future, because Nokia has never been in tablets, Nokia's about phones. I don't think I am. Like, with all my love and respect to our readers, I think the tablet part of Nokia's strategy is going to be as huge as smartphone part of its strategy going forward. What do you guys think? Am I crazy?
I think
no.
I mean, go ahead.
Speak.
No, it's all you. You go.
I was just going to say yes. I think that Nokia in another world where Microsoft didn't create the Surface, definitely should have jumped into a Windows RT tablet and could have had a pretty decent level of success with it. Since we don't live in that world, then if I were Nokia, I would scuttle plans for tablets as quickly as possible. I would, I'd put them in the same building as all those cute developers were, just like, oh yeah, sure. You guys work on some other future stuff. We'll get to it later. Because I don't see how, even if they make something amazing, like you said, like what's the point? They're not going to be able to compete with Microsoft on that space.
I kind of
Chris?
agree with you, but I also feel like their expense in developing a Windows RT tablet has the potential to be pretty minimal because it really is essentially a scaled up phone. The software is written for them. They have their design language, which is still very attractive, largely because their phones that use this design language are pretty low volume at this point, so it's still a kind of a novel thing that won't be true forever. Once they have a lot of success, it's no longer going to be a very interesting ID. But at this point, it is. So if they made a scaled up Lumia 900 that was a Windows RT tablet, I think that they would be able to do something with that. They could, for one thing, this is a very important point. Microsoft, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm completely crazy on this, but I don't think Microsoft has said anything about availability of LTE Windows, Surfaces. Is that right?
That's true. That's totally
right.
correct.
They've only been Wi-Fi so far.
Right. So maybe Nokia's angle can be, okay, well, we are going to work directly with the carriers. We're going to do bundles, buy this Lumia 910 or whatever they call their Apollo device, and get this great LTE Windows RT tablet that looks exactly like your Lumia for some discount. I don't know.
No, but seriously though, I mean, I find the suggestion crazy that Nokia would just scuttle plans for a tablet. I do feel like the company is already really heavily invested in developing this tablet. Like, I don't think Nokia would do a tablet without like blowing it out and just doing something really impressive. In that respect, I do feel like Nokia is very much kind of like Apple and Sony, where those guys don't enter a new product category without having something that will blow people away, and just really capture the hype. And this is the thing. Nokia's first tablet is a momentous product, completely separate of its specs and its looks and its operating system and whatever. It's like iconic brand, iconic company entering a new market segment. Let's see what happens. Let's see what they do. They have such a great history of design. But then, like, Microsoft completely just took the wind out of that sail, because Microsoft did the really nicely designed Windows RT tablet. It did the really nice little innovation, which the touch cover and the type cover and all these other tweaks, and the integrated, kickstand, which is like perfectly designed. So it's like, wait, hang on a second. What is left for Nokia to do to blow people away? Like, how do you do a Windows RT tablet that is so superior to Surface that it makes people not think about it? And I don't know if Nokia can do that right now.
Well, I think their only smart option, if they're going to continue with the tablet strategy, is to search for demographics, search for kinds of customers that aren't completely or appropriately served with the Surface running RT or Pro. And I don't know. I'm not enough of an expert to know if those demographics exist, but if they do, I find it hard to believe that those two products are the be-all, end-all solution to the quote-unquote Windows tablet. There have to be other ways that market can be addressed. And
well, I will say this: the Surface, we don't know what the distribution is going to be on it. So Nokia is can get in every carrier store, and Nokia can get in every Best Buy and everywhere else. We don't know if Microsoft is going to be doing more than just Microsoft Store and online. These things might not be everywhere. They're certainly not going to be inside the carrier stores. And so I could see an argument for a Nokia tablet from that perspective. But from the perspective of like the ecosystem needs Nokia to swoop in and save Windows RT tablets by making something that is incredibly compelling hardware, I just don't see a huge need for it.
Although Nokia will have the AT&T LTE that you craved, Dieter.
I cannot live without.
So there's your killer feature.
Yeah. Chris, speaking of, how do I put this? Speaking of controversial arguments, do you want to talk about the reserve tank? Because I think you pretty much lost your mind. I think that this is a solution. Like this is just insane.
I've gotten that exact reaction countless times over the past few days. I was actually really surprised that I don't think a single person said, "Oh, that's a pretty cool idea." Everyone was just like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You've lost your mind."
Give us the 10-second pitch of what you're suggesting.
So here's the basic idea. In the motorcycle world, it is very common for there to be this thing somewhere on the engine that is essentially a valve that switches between two gas tank intakes. There's a normal and a reserve, and they're both going into the same tank, but the reserve can access a little bit of extra fuel at the bottom of the tank. And the idea is that you have that emergency stash of gas that can't be accessed normally. So when the tank goes quote unquote dry and the engine putters to a stop, you have just enough gas to get to a gas station or get to your destination by switching over to the reserve, and then you go on. And this has been a thing in motorcycles for all of time. It's been there for 4 decades. And so I thought, well, why couldn't you adapt that to phones? Because I can't. There are countless occasions where I don't properly manage the battery life that I have available to me on my device. It's not that I couldn't, it's that I don't. Either I overbrowse, I'm checking my email too often, I'm sending too many picture messages, something stupid is happening, and by 4 or 5 p.m. the phone is dead.
Hang on, you're sending too many picture messages? You're just kind of messing it up. You're all like, sweet man, I totally love Sprint Picture Mail. I am gonna just live stream with my life with little 320 by 320 images that I'm gonna send to my friends.
Look, man, MMS is the future. Okay, mark my words. But anyway,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
The basic idea is this. I want a forced shut off of the device before the battery is actually dead, so that when that shut off occurs, I can do something to the phone that gives me access to that last remaining, 25, 30, 35, 40 minutes of battery life, just enough to make one last call or navigate to my destination or get to a charger. And my initial thinking, and this is what I posited in the piece, was that the way to do that would be a physical switch underneath the battery cover that you actually had to pry the battery cover off to get to. So that it was really like, it was a come to Jesus moment when your battery ran out. Like you had to do something to the phone to actually switch the battery over to reserve. But with the comments that I got on the piece, it got me to thinking about how you could actually do this in software. And I think the solution would be this. And there might even be a way to do this with like Locale or one of those other situationally aware apps right now. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. But one option would be for, when you get down to say 10 or 5% battery life, the phone just shuts off. And then, you pull the phone out of your pocket. So that way it's kind of a self-preservation thing, right? That the phone shuts itself off early so that you have enough battery life when you switch the phone back on. So you turn the phone back on at this point, you get a dire warning message on the phone that says, hey, doofus, your battery is just about dead. You need to do something about it. But you still have a few minutes to do those last few things that you need to do. So maybe you could handle it that way. I still like the physical switch, but I think I'm literally the only human on the planet that thinks that's a good idea.
Well, Smart Actions does this on recent Motorola devices. There's a low battery mode. I'm pretty sure that the Galaxy S3 has a low battery thing where it alerts you, hey, you're down to 10%. We are turning off unnecessary services.
Oh yeah, there's a battery saver mode. Yeah.
Yeah. How is that not a better solution?
Because the battery saver. I'll tell you exactly why. Because the battery saver mode. I've used the battery saver mode on the GS3. First of all, I'm not convinced that it does anything. I think it might just be psychosomatic. It seems to drain at the exact same rate. But that more importantly, regardless, even if it is saving power drain, it's still draining power. I want it to stop draining power, period, when I get down to a certain threshold, so that by the time I pull the phone out of my pocket and see what's happening, I have that guaranteed last remaining 5 or 7 or 10% of the battery.
Look, this is very, very simple. The problem here is that Chris is applying his petrolhead mind to mobile problems, and the solutions that are coming out are just way too mechanical. That's just the basic simplicity of it. I mean, Chris, let's face it, you're also a watch enthusiast, and your favorite watches are really intricate ones. Fellow watch enthusiasts get really giddy and excited about things that are actually called complications. Like, a good thing in a watch is a complication. So
yes.
Coming from that sort of world,
Chris is like,
yeah, a reserve tank makes perfect
of course.
Look, guys. Once you try a phone with the reserve switch, you're not going to be able to go back.
No, Chris, I'm not even joking. Your reserve tank in a phone is exactly like these really luxurious, really highly designed watches that have, I mean, spectacularly sophisticated and brilliantly designed movements that represent time in the most obscure way. Like, you need to look at it like it's Japanese and interpret that thing. And one thing is twisting around, and then another thing is rolling around, and then the other one is snaking through, and you got the minutes and the seconds, and it's all kind of weird and freaky and whatever. And it always takes you like 7 seconds to figure out the time. That is your reserve tank, which, you know what? I think there's room for that.
So what you're telling me is that this is going to end up on a Vertu. You're telling me that this is going to end up on a Vertu because that's designed to be like a watch.
I mean, and you will buy it, and it will be amazing.
If you're selling Vertu phones, wouldn't that be kind of a nutty thing to be selling to people? Like, okay, we've got a battery, you can replace it, you can swap it. But if everything is desperation stage and you really just need to use the phone for emergencies, we've got a special battery. This is an extra one. So you're going to have the battery out and the phone will still work because it's a Vertu and it's, et cetera, et cetera. That's got marketing potential right there.
It does. It does.
Yeah. And if they actually do it, we're going to sue because we just came up with the entire pitch for them.
We're suing everybody all the time. And I see where you're going with this. This is definitely a segue, isn't it?
Oh, it is?
The segue is to discussing
it's a segue. Apple versus Samsung.
We do not have time. We're not going to get into it, but the Apple versus Samsung trial, we do have insanely complete coverage. Brian Bishop is there on the ground every day. Matt and Nilay are doing analysis with him. There's a huge stream of everything that's happening at the trial. And if you're not subscribed to the official Vergecast feed, they are doing a weekly breakout podcast specifically for this trial, Nilay and Matt and Brian, to talk about all the insanity that is happening there. And so if you're at all interested in any of this, hit the stream and listen to that podcast. And I mean, there's just so much stuff that's happened. I don't even know if there's like one thing I could pull out for us to talk about that.
Dude, just say readtheverge.com. It's easy enough.
There it is. Go there.
Just be there. We'll be there. You be there, and then good things will happen.
Yeah. And that, I think, is going to wrap up our mobile show for the week. If you want to follow us, we're at Verge on Twitter. I'm at Backlon. Chris is at ZPower. Vlad is at Vlad Savov. We've got an email address. It's mobileshow@theverge.com. And next week, we'll be here. So you should be too. Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.